Oh my gosh, we are live. We are live here. And I'm in a new place. It's the first time in a long time that I've been in a new place. You want to know where I am? I'm at Alternate Ending in Aberdeen here in Jersey, right? And we're here for a live conversation with Alternate Ending, obviously, because I'm here. And we also have Bonesaw and The Seed Living Beer Project with us on this live conversation. So thank you all for tuning in. And we're not just going to talk about, the typical stuff. We're going to talk about other things, but about beer and like science of beer and things like that, and maybe Star Wars and maybe basketball. Who knows? Maybe the Mets opening day or something. Who knows? But we're going to talk about stuff, right? So thank you all for tuning in, and I'm going to let the guys that are happen to sitting sort of next to me introduce themselves, and then we're going to pass it down to tell everyone who you are and what you're doing. And where you're from, also. Not what you're doing, because we know what we're doing. Oh my God, I'm drawn. Not enough caffeine yet.
Where are we from?
Or enough beer.
Or enough beer.
Well, my name's Brendan. I'm the head brewer here at Alternate Ending Beer Company, and with me is Steve,
how you doing?
The assistant brewer here. And I guess I'm kind of originally from Denville, New Jersey, but I lived in Kansas for a while, and now I'm back making beer.
I'm from actually right around the corner in Morganville, so I'm not too far from home from here. I grew up right around the corner from the brewery, and I think I've been coming here since they've been a movie theater.
Right, because we are in a former movie theater.
We are.
See, it's always a fun thing when you figure out what a place was.
Like we're actually sitting in one of the theaters.
Which is very interesting.
I think, like 10 feet up higher, because it was dropped down.
Interesting. So we're sort of above floating above
the
surface.
theater.
Interesting. Cool. Awesome. Let's pass this one over to AJ. Tell everyone who you are and where you're from.
Well, I'm AJ, and I'm from California, of all places. So, been here about 3 years. Came out to help start up Bonesaw, and kind of fell in love with the area. I think I'll stick around for a while. And yeah.
And for those that don't know, Bonesaw is in Glassboro, in Gloucester County. So awesome. And then Sean, where are you from, and what is your brewery, etc.? Go for it.
I'm Sean. I'm one of the owners and brewers of The Seed, a living beer project in Atlantic City. We're a small brewery, a couple blocks off Hard Rock, basically, in Atlantic City proper. I'm from North Jersey. I'm from Vernon, up in Sussex County. If anyone's seen Action Park documentary, that's my hometown. My wife Amanda and I, who also the other partner in the brewery, our other brewer, we moved down this way to go to school, and same thing, kind of fell in love with the area and been down here ever since.
It's awesome to have everyone here, and thanks for everyone tuning in. We already have people excited about talking about beer chemistry. Maybe since I'm the only non-brewer here, and I don't want to be a brewer, but I have made beers before, including one of the collabs we did back in the day, AJ, for Atlantic City Beer Fest. We made that New Zealand Pilsner before things like that were, I think that was 4 years ago, maybe? Possibly 4 years ago. I don't remember now, but it was a good year. Yeah, because last year didn't count, right? So nothing happened last year, right?
Okay, yeah.
No, but it was a great beer. Maybe we can you can talk about the unique system you guys have going on over there, and then we can kind of go from it there. And by the way, everyone that's tuning in, please comment, ask questions. I can see them all here. If you have any questions or comments, please throw them in there, including Class Action Park. Comments like that are definitely exciting, but we also want to talk about beer too, right? So tell us a little bit about your unique system, AJ, and then we'll spin it from there.
Well, okay. So the system that we have at Bonesaw is called the HEBS. It's called High Efficiency Brewing System, which is kind of, a really just vague term for a mash filter. What's cool is it used to be not that many years ago that the only time you would see a mash filter would be at like an Anheuser plant. It would be the size of a school bus and probably cost $5 million. And then in the last, let's say 20 years, which is nothing really in the grand scheme of things, there's a couple companies, IDD and Miura, that started to downsize these mash filter systems for craft brew sized breweries. This is the boring part. Now the fun part is the mash filter is sick because not only is the efficiency insane, but it's super fast. So I would work on these 30 barrel, Rolec or Braucon systems even, and as amazing and beautiful as they are, you were still looking at like a 90 to 120 minute lauter or basically rinsing of the grain to, really hash it out. And now you're talking about a mash filter where it takes me basically 11 minutes to empty the mash mixer and another 10 minutes to squeeze. So you just took 120 minutes and took it down to 21. That's kind of insane. And the only reason that, I'm sorry, what's that?
Said must be nice.
I know, right?
Well,
the only reason, for the first 2 years, I did all of the brewing at Bonesaw myself, and the only reason I was able to do that is because of the system, because it's so damn fast. Like, it's pretty cool. And then I'll tell you the other fun part about it is like you can put anything through this filter. You could put like a baby through this filter and not even like hurt it. It's great. I make cold brew coffee in it. I made a peach beer that was 50% peach puree. Filter doesn't care. I made a beer that was 80% oats, which don't do that because it wasn't necessarily the best beer in the world. It was great, but it's awesome what you can do with this thing. And it's been a lot of fun.
That is pretty cool. Which is kind of like almost the opposite of what you have going on there, Sean, right?
Oh, it's 100% the opposite. Our system is like the most bare bones cobbled together thing. There's a lot of reasons we did it that way. Cost was a big one. Our focus is Saison, pretty much. Saison, lager, local ingredients. So not exactly hype beers these days. So we knew it wasn't going to be just cranking out kettle sours and stuff like that to keep the lights on. So we kept our system as simple as we possibly could. We have a 7-barrel system that we could push to 10 if need be. We have 7.5-barrel fermenters, 120-barrel horizontal that we just have a Saison Solera running right now. So we don't really need to push the system much past 7.5. We have a 15-barrel hot liquor tank and the 7/10-barrel kettle. Those were the only things we purchased new and specifically made for brewing. Our mash tun we had custom built out of an old dairy tank in Minnesota. It was just something that we had always wanted for one reason or another. We've got these super cool pictures early on of some of these guys that we revered, like Sante Adarius and the Saison world and Trillium, and these guys that were starting on these tiny little systems that were basically just big ass homebrew tubs. All these cool images of collaborations, people just standing around this vat, just stirring a big oatmeal basically. So we wanted to build that out kind of. It falls a little bit in line with our, what I'll call Saison or farmhouse ethos, is kind of just simple, not overly technologically advanced brewing. So yeah, it's very much the opposite of a lot of nicely set up brew houses.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, we don't have control panels. We don't have manifolds. Everything's pumps and hoses and buttons for temperature up, buttons for temperature down, but it works.
That's very much that handcrafted, when you really touch every drop of the work before it comes out to that fermenter, before it goes to the customer. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it really sucks in the sense that there's no easy brew day, period. But I guess part of the reward, if you want to look at it that way, is exactly that. You really feel like you put a little something into every batch. Not that you don't on what I'll call real systems, but yeah, it's sweaty days.
It's
And so,
awesome.
what do you have going on here? What's your system all
Well,
about?
we very much have like a Cadillac reel system here. We've been very fortunate to have some great equipment to brew with. So we have a kind of a production 10-barrel decoction system here where it's an oversized mash tun. So it's basically a 15-barrel mash tun with an oversized 10-barrel kettle, 30-barrel hot liquor tank so we can double brew if we need to. We do 10s into 10s, 10s into 20s. And, you know, it's still very much manual. You know, I don't think louder rakes are really that beneficial anyway. So we use them, but really it's still very much hands-on when we're making a mash and kind of building that filter, you know, so to speak. But it is, you know, once you really get the hang and know what the system wants, it's a dream to brew on. It's a piece of cake. You know, we still have our, you know, solid 90, 100-minute louder, something like that. But, you know, it makes it very easy to brew without a mash filter. And our efficiency is great, you know, especially doing the decoction brews. I think the last double decoction we did was like 96%. So that still kind of amazes me the more that we fine tune, you know, that method of brewing, how efficient it is and, you know, really how crystal clear work you can get out of the mash tun and how crystal clear you can get it out of the kettle into the fermenter too. It's pretty rad. So we're still dialing it in, but we've got kind of a Cadillac over here, and it's awesome. So I'm kind of curious, like how tough is that mash filter to clean out? So you have a reduced louder time, but does that CIP pretty efficiently, or do you have plates to pull? I'm sure that's where you lose your time.
You don't want to know. So basically, the other thing about the mash filter is every other plate has a water bladder. So where we really get the efficiency is once all of the grist, the mash is loaded into the filter, we squeeze it with basically up to 60 psi of hydraulic pressure. So you're getting every last drop out of it, and you're getting your efficiency. But the other nice thing is, once we're done, we open it up and everything falls out like a pancake. I mean, and then we zap it with one of those like really wimpy Home Depot pressure wash, like the really shitty Home Depot pressure washers, you know, like the wimpy ones. Couldn't even hurt your feelings, and we're so it's nice. But don't get me wrong, I'm with Sean. I've done a lot of like roots brewing. You should have seen my shoulders when I was 26. I was ripped. I've done a lot of that too. So I'm all about bootstrapping. I'm definitely a proponent and a fan. Just you know, Bonesaw is a production brewery. It's kind of a different model. Like when you're shooting to that 20,000, 50,000 barrel, you can't do it by hand. Obviously, you have to have some tools. So that's all.
We're not anti-tool. I love tools that make things easier.
Yeah, man. Totally.
You have the right tools, you can make the best beer, right? You know, so it's, you know, it's all
well. But again, there's
everything.
There's no substitute for doing things with your hands. I'm still, hopefully, always going to be that guy. So respect.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Sean. You mentioned how you guys want to do traditional like saisons and you know local and things like that. Can you talk about some of the stuff you've put out? You guys haven't been open more than I think not even 6 months yet, right?
We're right around there. I think we're over 6 months. We started brewing in August. We spent the first month and a half, let's say, learning the system a little bit and filling a bunch of oak so we can get some of our mixed ferment saison in the works. We did our first can release in October, and we've been releasing cans. We've only been able to really handle once a month. Obviously, very odd world to open in that we weren't expecting when we first started planning this whole thing out. So we weren't planning on canning from the get-go. It was the only thing we were allowed to do in the beginning when we were first brewing was sell cans to go. We couldn't have anyone in the tasting room just because of some checklists that we had to go through with the municipality. But yeah, releasing cans since October, and we just opened the tasting room for the first time in limited capacity, of course, in February. So we've actually been able to do a lot of lager, which has been awesome. We've had lager in the tank since we started. Since our first can release, we didn't have lager, but since then we have. And it's kind of a pain in the ass to fit that into the schedule. It doesn't actually fit in the schedule, but we make it happen. Unfortunately, right now, to the detriment of our beer stock. We did just buy a few more fermenters already, so we've got some more fermenters coming on Wednesday morning. So that'll hopefully help with that. But yeah, we've switched now. We didn't start this way. One of the cool things, just local ingredients wise, every single beer that we do has grain that was grown and malted in New Jersey. So not necessarily a large component of the grist, but there's at least a bag or two of Rabbit Hill malt in every single beer we do now. So we had some interesting conversations with Hillary, who owns Rabbit Hill Farms. It's in Shiloh, New Jersey. For anyone who doesn't know, they grow all kinds of brewing grains and they malt it. They're the only malt house in New Jersey right now. So we had some interesting conversations with her because our Saison program is always very much 100% really showcasing local ingredients. So all the Saisons are 100% New Jersey grain. The lagers we try to do at as close to 100% New Jersey grown and malted grain as possible. They're not doing any kilns malts. So like we did a Schwarzbier inspired black lager that we had to source the dark malts from somewhere else, of course. But then we had some fun conversations with Hillary where it's like the grain's the grain. So it's cool for Saison, but why couldn't people start incorporating oats or raw wheat or something like that into IPAs? Even we have an IPA, we have West Coast IPA that we're releasing this week that has a little bit of Rabbit Hill Pilsner malt and a little bit of Rabbit Hill malted rye. So it was kind of one of those stupid things that we were kicking ourselves for not realizing earlier. But now that we've made the switch, that's a fun thing that we're able to do is keep kind of that Saison philosophy kind of strung throughout all the beers that we're doing.
Awesome.
That's great. Yeah. There's a lot of breweries that have been doing a bunch of the. Thank you. I'm getting refueled. There's a bunch of breweries doing.
It's actually our West Coast IPA.
Look at that.
We're releasing our West Coast.
We're canning that tomorrow, actually.
This week as well.
Nice.
You hear it first, guys.
Gonna have to try that because I'm a West Coast guy.
Same here, man. This is like this West Coast IPA is like my desert island beer. It's if you had to have one beer. This is that like selfish beer for me where I brew it exactly the way I want it. And that's, that's the way it is. And
looks the part. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It is tasty. So we did have a question that came through about that's here. I'm going to put it on the screen for all you guys. And I think it's a pretty good question to ask. What are your favorite styles to brew? And is it different from your best sellers? Thanks, Mark. Thanks for always asking us. I think, even I know most of these answers, but except for the brewing side. But yeah, go for it. You guys.
We kind of have a motto around here. Actually, it's like we brew hazy IPA and big stouts to pay the bills, so we can brew the things that we want to brew. And part of that having this decoction system was really being lager focused and trying to be traditional with that and trying to make very, very clean beers. So, for me, I think we're picking up on the lagers around here, but so my favorite style to brew is going to be either this West Coast IPA or the lagers when that does differ from our best sellers, which are always going to be the IPAs, especially in this market. It's just the way it is.
If you asked me like 2 years ago, I'd probably say a New England style IPA, but I think now more than ever, I think I'm enjoying, I don't know if it's because I'm brewing now more, or it's that I just enjoy pilsners and lagers and these like lighter ABV beer. Like, we made a smoked beer and it was awesome. And like, I was like, I'd never drink a beer like this 2-3 years ago. I'd be like, get that away from me. I'm not a crispy boy, and like now all I want to do is drink a smoked beer, a lager or a pilsner. And I love Saisons also.
But you realize how much you like drinking beer, so lower ABV stuff, I can drink more beer.
Totally.
Instead of these 8-9% IPAs, I'd rather drink 10 Pilsners or, route beers than a 4-pack of 9% hazies at 5,000 calories each.
Yep.
We're almost 5,000 calories.
I mean, in one beer, maybe. But
yeah.
How about you, AJ? What do you like brewing, whether it's on your, pilot system or your big system or just in general? And what do you like? And is it different from what's up?
I'm the OG lager guy. Like, I think we have, I have 8 lagers on tap and about to have a 9th. I think we're the only in the country with a Bock flight. Like we're gonna have
Cool.
a Doppelbock, a Hellesbock, a Bock, all at the same time on tap.
That's incredible.
It
Yeah.
is.
So
We're
I
gonna
mean,
have-
don't get me wrong. Like our biggest seller is always going to be Swoosh. It's our hybrid East Coast West Coast IPA. It's great. It's 7%. So to your previous point, like you can't drink 7 of them. Don't do it. Yeah, so it's definitely lagers for me, man. Like I always look forward to. So our Shoretown Hellas lager is coming out mid-May. Again, I always look forward to that. And then mid-August we'll have Bonetoberfest, which is my be-all, end-all. I wish I made that beer all year beer.
We've got to bring multi beers back. You know, they disappeared. I think we're gonna come.
No, but it's not multi though. It's like the Wiesen style. It's like the pale one. It's not a Marzen.
Oh,
So,
okay. Sure.
yeah, which for me, again, you were talking about making that one selfish beer for you. That's what I like. I like that, Eyinger Fest beer type, where it's super pale, has a little biscuit, kind of strong, kind of kicks you in the nuts a little bit, but just the beer. So, and then yeah, sure, okay, I'll do my stouts and all that kind of nonsense too, but that's I mean, you're kind of circling the point anyway, which is like make everything for everybody. Like if somebody comes into your brewery and you have 23 beers on tap and they don't find something that they like, they probably just don't like beer, you know? And so a couple of them are for me and a couple of them are for Mike and a couple of them are for Sean. But really it's like there's a lot of stuff there. So you'll find something.
And how about you, Sean?
We're kind of lucky in the sense still that we've only been brewing for a handful of months. So we like brewing everything now. It's the first time in our brewing careers that we haven't been, I don't necessarily mean this in a negative way, but handcuffed. Like we don't have to listen. We're determining if the beers are cost effective or not. We're determining what the recipe should be, what the water profile should be, what the firm kind of profile should look like. So we're having fun brewing everything. We definitely always lean towards low ABV, balanced, drinkable beers. But I'll be completely honest, one of the most fun things for us was to start brewing hops again because we hadn't gotten to make IPA. We didn't care to make any IPA for a long time. So just getting to mess around with water profiles again and just kind of learning some of they're not necessarily new, but new-ish to us hops that we never really played with because at home we're brewing with Saws, and that's kind of it. That's half a joke, but not really. We always say that Saws is the best hop in the world, but then I'm not going to go try to make IPA that's 100% Saws and expect people to enjoy it. So as far as that compared to best sellers go, again, we kind of force the beers we like on people a little bit. If you come to the brewery, typically will only be 1, maybe 2 IPAs on tap. We only have 10 lines, and you'll get a mix of English, British style pub ales. You'll get a mix of lagers and saison, and then a hop or 2. So again, we're so young and so small that we don't really have this kind of track record of what best sellers are. We make a little bit of beer and it sells, and we're able to keep making what we want, which is nice.
That's great. Yeah, so I mean, this is not a beer question, but this one just came through too.
Do I really sound like Vince Vaughn? I guess I'll take that as a compliment because Swingers is one of my favorite movies from back in the day.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So Money Baby, you don't even know it.
Later we can see who you. For the person who asked that question, unfortunately on our side you didn't authenticate with StreamYard, so I can't see your name, but we're gonna look it up later. So, but thank you for the good stuff.
I don't mind. No one's ever told me that, but thank you. Now I'm gonna think about that.
Claps for everyone. But yeah, so some of the Mark Graves is just asking us 1,000 questions. I guess he's not doing anything tonight, huh? Just kidding, Mark. But yeah, what's your favorite thing about the beer scene and the culture here in Jersey? I mean, 2 of you came from out of the state before you started brewing in Jersey.
Yeah.
It's
when I moved here during COVID, so I still have a lot to learn about
Yeah.
the Jersey beer scene. We're kind of still testing the waters out, meeting all you cats. So I can't really answer that question personally.
I mean, I'll jump in and say I think one of the coolest things is how much growth potential is still here, not just for more breweries, more beer, but for knowledge, for education. I mean, New Jersey was so handcuffed for so long because our liquor laws and alcohol laws are just stupidly archaic that we weren't really allowed, we meaning New Jersey, the state wasn't really allowed to grow at the same exponential rate that, I mean, look at Pennsylvania, look at Philly, look at New York, the lower Hudson Valley, New York City. I mean, these have become beer meccas, and it just, the opportunity wasn't quite there for New Jersey. So I think one of the cool, I mean, there's a million great things, but one of the best is just how much upward room for motion there is still.
Oh, without a doubt. It's not just not just, like you said, not just adding new breweries and brew pubs to the mix, but also just expanding the ones that are already here and growing in their own space, or in their, like, expanding outside their space and kind of honing in on their craft too. I've seen, especially during I talk about this all the time, but especially during the last year or so, with the COVID stuff going through and not being able to get out and, have events or have, bar events and things like that, people are really just honing in on their craft in their own space and, like, dialing in as much as they can. So it's definitely there. How do you feel, AJ, coming from another state? And also, you lived in another country brewing before, didn't you, as well?
Really?
Right?
A couple of them, yeah. No, Sean nailed it. So I was going to say it in maybe a more blunt way, where basically, like, there is no beer in here. Like, it's so young, it's so new, it's so fresh. Like, everyone's still kind of like figuring it out and exploring all these, like, crazy ideas and all this stuff. It's awesome. It's like, so, maybe there's 50 breweries in South Jersey. There's 50 breweries in the East County, San Diego town that I grew up on my uncle's back 40 in. Like, it's different to come out here, where everything is so exciting, I guess is the best word. It's like, these guys are opening up this brewery and these guys are doing this, and this one's big and this one's small and this one's doing these things and this one's doing these things. California is like old hat, man. Like, you would be hard pressed to open up a brewery in California right now and make it work. Yeah. But you come out to New Jersey and everyone's fired up, everyone's excited. It's awesome, dude. It's hey, I'm here, right? Like, I'm in. I love it.
And that's one thing I've noticed too, is that, it's just ripe for craft beer in the fact that we have so many craft beer lovers in the area. So coming from the Midwest, you're still kind of converting some people into craft beer here and there. You're trying to put out a product that maybe would get them in the door and, okay, try this, lager, try this blonde, try this, amber or whatever, try to work them up the gamut and kind of commit to craft beer a little bit more. But around here, there's just so many people that are just dying for local beer and craft beer itself. So it's just, it's a good market. It's a good community of craft beer lovers, from what I've noticed.
And it's grown in the last 10 years since I threw NJCB together, 10 years ago. The whole movement has grown. We didn't, there's thousands and thousands of people that are just digging things that never would have had it before. Like, I saw some people the other day that I was, I see one of those quarantines, and so we're hanging out, and I know my one friend was like, she goes, just bring me the sours. So then I had to make sure I brought the sours, and their husband's like, just bring me the lagers. And I'm like, okay. So, just everyone. And before that, when we first met them, maybe 4 years ago, they were like, yeah, we don't really drink beer. And then we've gone out and met them at breweries and met them for dinner. And it's like, we order rounds of beer, like, it's totally an interesting world that's moved on a little bit, and people got a little bit more, like, exposure to things. And it's also because of all the breweries, and, like, everyone has their personality and everyone has their different approach to it. But it's also like, there's different ways of everybody, like, kind of getting to that beer itself. And the approach that you guys have going with, like, you know, having 35 out of 37 lagers on, or having nothing but saisons on, and having a nice variety, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And it's really the cool part about the beer, like the science of it, and like the approach to it, and the culture that you guys are kind of cultivating in your own space, but also expanding out. It's fun. And yes, we all want to get to every single brewery. We talked about this before and off air. It's hard to get to every place, but you know, the goal is to, like, you know, work with each other. And like you mentioned before, like Sean, like everyone, like using each other's kind of like the knowledge. Yeah, like it's really an awesome thing.
I think that's what most of us craft brewers, you know, really enjoy about collaborations. Not only meeting new friends and meeting new people, but looking around another guy's brewery, like, oh, that's cool. Like, look what they're doing over there. Like, yeah, we got to do that when we get back to our place, you know, something like that. Like, there's so much to still learn. You know, you can read, you know, technical quarterly papers every night, but until you see like a seasoned brewer and a hack that he has or something like that, you know, it's, you know, that's what really makes it a production brewery turn, and you know, it's what creates more efficiency, and that's the fun part about it, is what can you learn? How can I tweak this and make that better, and to that constant improvement, you know?
Plus, let's be honest, we all have kind of a thing for stainless steel. So if I come to your brewery, I'm like, oh, you got stainless steel? I love stainless steel. Let me see your stainless steel.
Yeah. It's very sexy, stainless steel, and expensive. Maybe why it's so hot, because it's expensive.
Oh, and expensive. Yeah.
I think that a lot of the Jersey beer scene has changed so much. I don't know if it had anything to do with like New York becoming so much bigger in the beer scene. You know, New York for a while wasn't even a huge beer scene, and Philly was always like, oh, we got to go to Philly, we got to go to Philadelphia to go to the beer scene. And like, I think now Jersey's becoming a really popular beer scene. I mean, you know, more and more breweries are starting opening up. I mean, we're not far from Jersey Shore, but there are so many breweries around the Jersey Shore, and I think that entices people too when they're going on vacation. They're like, oh, awesome.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. But I mean, Philly was always ahead of like everything else around. And then like when Brooklyn just, you know, lit up out of nowhere.
But Brooklyn was one of the beer capitals of the world at one time, like, you know, historically.
Yes, like right before all this kind of you know, before everything came through in Brooklyn, there was Brooklyn Brewery, you know, that kind of stuff. And then out of nowhere, it felt like everyone opened up. And then I think obviously with people that commute from New Jersey to New York or New Jersey to Pennsylvania, like all those things started pushing through, and it got even bigger and bigger. And it also helps the Jersey brands and the Jersey breweries and Jersey brew pubs and bars and restaurants to really get better stuff in their own space. I mean, look in the shelves itself. Like when we go to the liquor stores, there's more than just what it was back in the day, like 5 years ago. There's more than just the you know, the core brands of out-of-state breweries and whatnot. Now there's
I can find Treefontaine in my local.
Yeah, like there's
10 minutes from my house. There's bottles that I would never get 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago for that matter. And now I'm like, oh my god, this is the most amazing thing that I'm getting these sours or lambics that I never would have had before, and it's pretty awesome. It's great.
Well, now Sean make them for you, so you know it's all good.
Yeah, it's true.
Wait, so Philly guys, so did Philly jump off first, or did New York jump off first? Because again, I'm new here.
First, definitely.
Yeah, Philly has had a long-term love affair of craft.
Oh
like,
my god!
From Monk's Cafe and things like that, and then
even Pennsylvania in general.
Everybody knows about Monk's. All right, yeah, fair enough.
And then all these smaller bars in Philly started doing craft, and then New York had a couple like good beer bars, like even 12, 13 years ago. I remember going to Blind Tiger in the back years and years
Ginger
ago.
Man.
Like Ginger Man was great.
Still is actually.
I haven't been in a long time. But then they had a couple others that like opened, closed, things like that, moved, opened other places, closed, you know, that kind of thing. And then now that it became like beer is kind of everywhere, all these other cities started just getting like everyone had beer, right? In Jersey, a lot more of the restaurants have really good beer on tap, and liquor stores are packed with great local beer and regional beer as well, and international, etc. But it's pretty interesting how much we have on the shelves and like in draft lines. Of course, skipping the whole COVID that no one's really buying draft at most bars and restaurants currently, but that's hopefully going to switch to a different approach in the near future. But it's interesting. I also see like funky stuff on tap and funky stuff like bottled and canned now, like not just your standard IPAs, etc., that are like at every store. I mean, I see it. Like you said, Steve. I think there's places that are selling saisons and sours and farmhouses, and I don't think it's just the like Goza style like kettle sours and whatnot. It's just there's a lot of variety that's out there.
Well, I think a lot of people also come in and they're like, "Hey, do you have this brand?" And they're like, "Oh no, but let me see if I." Enough people come into a liquor store and they ask for the same exact beer over and over again. You got to imagine they're going to be like, "Hey, we need to get something like this or this exact thing."
Which leads us to like the question: are you guys coming out? Are you guys brewing up anything unique and different coming in? I mean, the Seed being so new, you still have to figure out your schedules and everything on brewing. But like, what are you guys coming up with some funkier stuff or different things than you're normally doing, or things that are more difficult in terms of, we were talking about brewing? Are there things that are more difficult to brew coming out? I mean, I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of barrels, so I'm assuming, there's, and I've seen them at the Seed. I know you have a whole space there with some stuff. So what's coming down the line with some of the funkier stuff?
Well, we're kind of the same age as the Seed right now. We're still filling wood just to get some beer and some wood. We're still figuring everything out, trying to look at the market and figure out what our identity is. But we knew that we wanted to be very lager forward and IPA forward. But we are also looking at mixed culture, live culture sour beer right now, and kind of seeing how does the wood interact with this room and the humidity. There's been discussions about some spontaneous, but we're still kind of feeling the water out. What I can say is the first beer that we brewed on this system was a decoction Pilsner, and that stayed on the menu. So it's just, we're still experimenting with, not only pulling off a decoction or a double decoction, but how do you pull that off perfectly, activate all of your enzymes? How do we pull off a protein rest and not kill our foam, when we really don't need a protein rest anyway, when it's just, I need to get a certain, thin mash to be able to transfer this around. So we kind of require a protein rest, and modifying, doing some of these Hockerts, decoction mashes, and how do we make it work on the system? But I think we've been pretty fortunate. But for me, it gets back to the science of beer. How do we make sure that every number that we hit throughout the process is absolutely perfect, and we can just produce the best liquid that's absolutely possible on this system, or from this location with this water. And we've got just great water. I can't even tell you for lager beer coming out of our municipality that we're filtering. It's fantastic. So we're still kind of refining things, and being a brew pub, you have an obligation to variety. I think when you have people coming in and dining, beer that works with food, beer that works in cans to go out, and trying to have something for everyone. So for us, it's just kind of, we're just now starting to turn some of those seasonal beers that we release that everybody really dug. So how do we refine those and re-release them with some tweaks and not disappoint people if something has changed a little bit? But it's to me, I'm a numbers data-driven brewer. So how do we just really dial everything in, number wise, to get everything out there? So I think stylistically we're still finding some things. We know what we like to do, but how do we just tighten the numbers up so they're absolutely perfect? Every step of the way, whether it be the mash, in the kettle, or in the fermenter.
I'll pop in quick just on the brewing science side of things. It's really funny just speak to the saison side of the brewery. My background's in marine biology and microbiology. I still have a day job managing a research lab for Rutgers full time, and we spent most of our brewing career really kind of in the same vein that Brendan's talking about, just like really, really down to the minutia of detail, worrying about every last step of the process from a biological standpoint, a chemistry standpoint. And in particular to the saison world, we've come basically 180 degrees back from that. It's funny, we did a stout collaboration with a friend of ours who fights so heavily. Fights isn't the right word. He spent so much time learning the hot side, the recipe build, how every last ingredient works together to produce exactly the wort that he needs to get the flavor he wants, the aroma he wants, the final residual sugar that he needs, so on and so forth. And in the saison world, we've almost abandoned most of that. We throw the same simple grits together, we brew. So we're lucky in the same sense as you guys up at Alternate Ending. Our water is phenomenal. Atlantic City water has been ranked top 20 in the country several of the past few years. We don't filter our water at all. We don't even carbon filter our water. There's such a low level of chlorine in it. We don't touch it. That kind of, for us, lends to the saison philosophy. We do doctor our water profiles for every beer, just because we want them to taste good. But yeah, it's so much on the back end for us, which I wish I could put a scientific spin on. But what we've really grown to love is the blending component and kind of the sensory science, the sensory side of things. We set our water profiles, our grist, our fermentation, everything to where we think this beer should come out. And then we try to just sit down and figure out every little kind of edge that is different than we expected. And then it does get back to the science on how do you figure out how to adjust that for next time, basically. We spend the majority on our effort on a daily basis with our water profiles, just making sure pHs are exactly where they need to be throughout the process and catering mouthfeel, body, perceived flavors with our water profile. So that's certainly the part of the beer science world that we will never get away from.
Very interesting.
Well, people don't realize how big of an ingredient water really is, not just in hitting your numbers during the brew, but from a flavor standpoint, from a sensory standpoint. I think it's, crucial, being 95% of your beer to have the right water profile, the chemistry for that particular style, and, from a lot of home brewers, I've always encouraged them, really look at your water, really look at what you have there. You can't just grab some distilled water from ShopRite and make a great beer. You really have to look and build that just right, and, for me, I've always been really big on having magnesium, and we had zinc as a yeast nutrient to really make sure we build it not just for the sensory perspective, but because a lot of these trace minerals are yeast nutrients as well to have healthy, consistent fermentation. So it's a huge part, that everybody should really look at in their process, I think.
How about you at Bonesaw, AJ?
Oh man, I won't bore you guys with too much. Backstory. So I was a chemistry major, so that's kind of my jam. So to kind of parakeet what Sean and Brendan are saying, yeah, we take everything at a scientific level, but I was also listening to the other things that they're saying. It's like nobody wakes up in the middle of the night and thinks, hey, I have this great idea for this bohemian, like Save Pivo style dark Pilsner, if you will, and it's going to be exactly this and exactly this and exactly this, and I'm going to add this many pounds of whatever, and I'm going to add this many grams of this salt, and it doesn't work like that. So you can't lose sight of the artsy side of it, where you're like, hey, I want to make this fucking beer. You told me I could swear, right?
You can, 100%.
So
Fucking
it's like, I made this dark mild at Bonesaw, and it's never going to sell, and I'm probably going to end up dumping a few kegs of it. And who gives a shit? Because I had this great idea. I love Brawler, and I was like, you know what? I want to make an English dark mild, and people were going to love it. Some people were going to love it. Who cares? And you sort of work backwards from there with the numbers and the salts and the science and whatever. And this is me falling on my own sword as a chemist, saying, like, the science kind of takes second place to the love, man, like the passion, the interest, because again, we just made this other crazy stupid beer that I can't tell you about because it's a secret, but it's just like, it didn't start out as numbers and patterns and algorithms. It started out as, hey, I have a really fucking stupid idea, guys, we should fucking do this. And we are. And then everything else sort of falls into place. Then it's math. Then it's like, all right, well, you need this many pounds of this, and I'm going to incorporate these malts and these salts and whatever. And it, you know, you can't negate the chemistry, of course, but like, let's not forget what we're doing here, guys. Like, it's all about this crazy love, first of all.
I'll tell you, I'm the asshole that like takes 30 boxes of Reese's peanut butter puffs and decides what's our grams of sugar contribution that's going into the mash and calculate our target kettle volume based on the sugar that's in the fucking Reese's peanut butter puffs. So for me, I take the crazy idea and I'm like, oh man, I have to get all this information down on paper because it'll drive me crazy if I'm just willy-nilly, and what's our sparge volume going to be? I don't know. I'm like, fuck it. I just makes me nuts if I don't have that target, where I can, have the data on paper,
You definitely have to have both. And that's also what pilot batches are for.
Yeah. Well, I've never been a fan of pilot batches. 10 barrels, that's a small batch. We'll get like 85% there on the first batch, I'm sure.
Cool.
Maybe I'm crazy.
We had a question earlier that about any fruited sours that people that are making, if you're doing any or if you're not doing any. If you are there anything that you would like to make but aren't sure about?
Who wants to go first, boys?
I'll say from a brewer's perspective is please ferment out all of your sugar before you put it in a package. That's probably number one.
We just
No.
the beer that we have tomorrow. Yes.
We do have a fruited Berliner Weiss.
I also have a centrifuge, so
yeah. So if you can get the yeast out of there, then you don't need to ferment your sugars out. If nothing will ferment.
Please go on.
But we did a collaboration brew with all the women of Alten and did a Berliner Weiss, but instead of using 40% wheat, we use 40% oats. Thinking, well, if we fruit this with some peach puree, those oats will add a nice creamy mouthfeel and maybe offset some of the acidity. It still landed about a 3.3 or just shy of a 3.3. But it turned out extremely well. But that's something, for me, I'll lose sleep thinking that we're going to put out, this one of these hype beers that just explodes on somebody's counter and becomes a huge liability, So there was a painstaking effort to try to ferment like 650 pounds of peach puree to make sure that it's a stable package when it goes out. But that's probably exactly opposite what's happening over at the Seed. Looking at this kettle sour Berliner Weiss with peach puree, but. I think if you do look at the numbers, even on some of those quick sours, you can make very clean beer. It might not be as, dimensional as some of the mixed culture stuff is, but very much something that's a technical process, and it has to be done right, and it has to be done, very number driven for it to be clean.
There's a crazy big market for that right now.
Yeah,
for that world of just clean, acidic, fruit forward beers.
And I sometimes I worry, like, are we too balanced? Like, oh man, this is really nice and balanced. There's a nice peach character. It's tart still. There's no lactose in this, and is that what the consumers want? But I think for me, you still have that lager mentality where I want everything to be delicate and balanced, but still fit into what's going on in the moment. I don't know, but you definitely won't catch us putting unfermented sugar in a package or making those types of smoothies that some of these other cats are making right now.
Huh.
Yeah, and I'll just add for us, one of the things, and this might be just me, but I hate the term sour beer. It doesn't mean anything. There's there's so many different styles with acidity. I mean, we're talking about beers on the shelf right now. You've got a lot of 3F stuff sitting around. You've got lambic. You've got these quote unquote sours that are just carbonated fruit puree with a little bit of lactic acid in them. And to call both of them sour beer just really means nothing. We got a lot of this early on when people say, "Oh, you guys are going to be making sour beer. You guys are the sour brewers." Blah blah blah. So something that's like really sings to me is making sure people, at least that come to the seed, realize that what you're going to be getting is a beer that might have acidity in it. We try our best to describe the beers that are available, if there is an acid component to it, why and how. But I would really love for people to get past the term sour beer and to something that just helps kind of delineate the style a little more. We sat in a room of 300 brewers that make mixed ferment beer, kettle sour beer at CBC in Philly a few years back, and just had an open panel discussion exactly about this. How do we name these beers? What do we call them so that someone's not walking into the store and grabbing a Rodenbach Grand Cru and expecting like a 450 North slushy sour type of thing. So with that being said, most of the stuff that we've put in oak early on had no had no lactic acid bacteria in it. So there'll be little to no acidity in any of those barrels. We wanted to get some really Brett forward, yeast forward beers for blending. We also wanted beers that didn't sit in oak for too long. We didn't want them to pick up too much of that oak tannin. But we now, for the first time, have a decent amount of that beer packaged, conditioning in kegs, cans, bottles. And we're starting to slowly influx some barrels with some that'll have some more acidity to them, some more sour beer type of blends, looking forward to fruit season. So we kind of follow the seasons with that regard, that strawberries and blueberries will be first. So we're kind of planning on how we're best going to use those and tracking whatever else we can try to find locally.
That's
great.
awesome. So let me ask you, so these Brett positive barrel beers that you have, how old is your collection? Like, how many barrels do you have? How old are they? What's going on? I'm very curious.
We didn't, and I'm not just saying this because this is public, we didn't illegally brew any beer. So we were allowed to start producing.
I'm sorry. I'm not catfishing you.
No, I know that. But
He's just got to say that, though, while he's on air. Right now.
Yes, no, if anybody is listening.
Yeah, we started brewing in August. So that's our
wow.
August 2020. So that's our oldest beer. We have quite a portfolio, for lack of a better term, collection of Brett strains that we've isolated through the years that have like really tremendously varied timelines to maturity. One of our favorite Brett strains you can get to dry out, not leave residual sugar, and give you an interesting, mature, quote unquote, character in 3 to 4 weeks.
Wow.
That's typically in secondary. It takes a lot longer if it's a co-pitch primary, but it's like it's very I'll say clean as far as the Brett world goes. It's very just overripe fruit with like
yeah, no, I got you.
Is it like a Brett Brux variant or Bruxensis that you're using?
Listen, Mike, I'm going to use your fucking podcast selfishly, but so we are low key starting our own Funkworks, and I would love to talk with you offline about maybe doing some blending, some shit like that. Anyway, back to the conversation. Thanks, Mike.
No problem. Anytime.
Yeah, it's a Brux variant. I think that's one of the fun things with Brett is like everyone's so well accustomed to the many different sack strains. They're like clean beer strains. So a lot of people, I mean, even people that don't brew might know the difference in the IPA world between Chico or Cali Ale yeast and London 3 and some of these English strains that are used for the hoppy beers. It's all one species, and there's 10, 20, 100, 200 different strains within that. And all the different Brett species have equally as much, if not more, variety or opportunity for strain diversity. Mm-hmm. So we've been slowly collecting a portfolio of Brett strains through the years. We've saved a lot of bottle dregs from beers that we love. We plate everything out. We isolate everything. We'll run like single strain tests on them. We don't have time to do that much anymore, but luckily we've got a nice bank of yeast that we've grown over the past 8-9 years at this point. That Brett strain, that's our favorite. There was a brewery recently sold / defunct out of Colorado called Trinity. And he did a series of beers called the Magical Brettanomyces Tour. And the idea was that it was the same base Saison. It was like a spiced, herbed adjuncted Saison that he fermented with 7 different single strain Brett species and bottled them all separately and released them. Now, these beers were wildly infected with bacteria, but the yeast was relatively pure, and it was the Brett Dree strain that we isolated. That's our favorite. It's the same strain that Jacobson used for his dissertation on Brett. It's really quick. It's really fruit forward. It's really beautiful yeast. We try to use it as much as we can. That's kind of like our house, quote unquote, Saison character is basically a mix of that Brett strain and I don't know exactly what it is, a non-Brett, non-diastaticus strain that we isolated from Jester King bottles back in the day. So that 1-2 punch is kind of our house flavor, more or less. Cool. So we released one Saison bottle called Replete Trees. It was the first volume. That was basically a single barrel of that Mad Meg strain blended with Brett Dree, and not blended with anything else. And that was like kind of a pure representation of what our house yeast character is. But we have a lot of other barrels. I mean, not a ridiculous portfolio. We maybe have 20, 25 barrels at the brewery. But most of them are different beers, different cultures to give us some significant blending stock.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's kind of the approach we've taken also. And speaking of Brettanomyces, I had a culture I babied for a couple of years back when I was brewing in Kansas, and I brought back with me to Jersey that we've inoculated a couple of wine barrels here to kind of develop that blending stock. So we're running we've got a couple of 500-liter puncheons and 10 other barrels that we're, with Saison or some just like a golden sour ale that we've inoculated with different bacteria to try to develop that blending stock as opposed to trying to have, just one cohesive, release. What a lot of people don't realize is you very much have to look at sour beer in the vein of wine, where you have different nuances from every barrel to create a release or to create a consistent release is very difficult, but definitely a huge fan of Brettanomyces and doing primary Brettanomyces fermentations also. That was something I was really big into that I hope we can do here as well. So I'd love to try that release that you have at that Brett Dree, because that sounds fascinating.
We actually, we had from you guys from the seed, we had that Saison, that wine Saison.
It was blended with wine grapes recently.
It was the purple. What's it called?
Yeah. It was Barbera, Tiny Blush Balloons. That was the first, I don't know if you want to call it wine hybrid. It's not exactly that. But yeah, we've been playing around a lot with different blends. We love working with wine grapes. It's one of the most fun fruits for us to work with. Obviously, we're not sourcing a lot of these grapes outrageously locally. We had two blends that we did on-site bottle pours of in the tasting room when we first opened. That was almost 50% by volume ambiently fermented grape must. It was Carmenere and Chenin Blanc, 2 separate ones. So we toned the must component back big time for the bottle that we released a month or so ago, 2 months ago at this point.
That was cool.
Thank you. And that was only about 20% by volume grape must. But again, that was just strictly yeast forward barrels. So there was very, very little acidity in that. Barbera is typically a grape that produces a lot of acidity. And this pressing, when it was fermented out, almost had none. So it was a really clean component to that, like, acidless barrel, basically.
Wow. Awesome. Where'd it come from?
We're lucky. There's a big wine distributor very close to us, Gino Pinto. So they do both commercial and like home hobbyist wine scale stuff. So every season they get whatever grapes are in season from around the world in, and you can get whole cluster, or they'll do fresh pressings of the must for you, sulfited, not sulfited. So we get pressings without any stabilizers in them. So we'll just let them ambiently ferment. If they're taking too long, or if they're not kicking off well enough for whatever was on the skins, we'll pitch Saison mixed culture in them and let them go till they're dry, and then back blend with barrel stock from there.
Let them rock. Do you know where the grapes actually came from?
The Barbera was Chilean, I believe.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I did a lot of wine beer hybridization back in California days. I didn't know it was a thing. So I'm kind of happy. I'm kind of glad to hear that somebody else has the same, like, I don't know, fascination.
Yeah.
Well, grape must is pretty rad. I've aged beer on carbonic macerated grape must, but cold in the walk-in in barrels before. So you really don't extract much of the tannin character out of the skins, but you get a lot of really cool, fresh character if you give it time. So it's it's kind of like lagering on the must, which is
Oh yeah.
a lot of fascinating things that can be done when you kind of blur the lines, so to speak.
Isn't I've seen this in a bunch of places. The Phasma, isn't that the grape musks that they use now for IPAs? Like I've seen other half do it. I've seen Monkish do it. I think a few other that Phasma. I don't know. I think it's called Phasma or whatever. I don't know what it's exactly called.
Yeah, it's like an Australian, New Zealand product or something like that. And to the best of my knowledge, they're basically taking like concentrated grape sugars and crystallizing them more or less. That can be added back ends for sweetness and for like that really intense concentrated grape character.
No kidding. That's interesting. I've never heard of that. No.
Yeah, a lot of it's a new thing. I don't know who started. I don't know if it was other half or if it was Monkish or I know Trillium used to do a beer or still does a beer, dialed in or dialed up.
Dialed in, yeah.
Dialed in. It's on grape musk and but the Phasma is this new thing that everyone started to do, and I've just started looking into it and seeing what it is.
I'll have to look that up. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah,
See, you learn something new every day, right?
Yeah, I would imagine that it would enhance some of the, New Zealand, Australian hop character, maybe with a little earthy, fruity undertone. Could add a little character on the back end, depending on how fermentable that is. But if it's concentrated grape sugar, I'm sure it's ultra fermentable.
So I do want to thank everyone for coming here and talking about the beer, and I think everyone nerded out a little bit, and it's really kind of cool to be able to do this. It's different than we've done in basically ever. I don't think I've done when I had to switch over to doing like sort of digital live streams and conversations. It was cool to like talk about the breweries. It was cool to talk about all that kind of stuff and what's coming down the line, things like that. But it's really cool to be able to like hone in on the science of it and like talk nerdy for the people out there that really care more about the science stuff. And everyone that's like, not everyone is a advanced home brewer or a pro brewer. Not everyone knows how to brew. Some people know how to put live streams together. But like at the same time, it's pretty cool to have this. And so thank you guys so much. I think everyone is now excited to visit all the breweries, which is pretty cool. We did have a question that I guess you guys can answer on our way out. Just maybe you can sign off by telling what your hours are and how to find you guys on social or whatever. And before we close for the day, if you guys have anything else, feel free to add it in. AJ, I'm going to let you go because you're right below me in this little fancy thing. I'm going to put you on the screen here. So you tell everyone how to find you and tell everyone.
I'm below you now. Okay.
Now you're to the left.
Now listen, it was great to meet you guys, Sean. I can't wait to come see you at the Seed. Brandon and Steve, I believe it was. Congratulations on your opening and your success, and continued success, I hope, to all of us. You can come see me at Bonesaw anytime. I basically live there. It's on 322 in Glassboro, right in between Rowan and the new Inspira Hospital. And yeah, thanks, Mikey. Appreciate you, buddy.
No problem. So yeah, Bonesaw is open almost every day, right? Every day.
Every day, yeah. Every day until 10, 11. I think it's 11. Sundays, we close at 8. We got food trucks Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and yeah.
On a different licensed premise.
The food trucks have nothing to do with Bonesaw. They just
They're one of those.
they're, you guys
Yes.
know how it goes. Yeah, they're there. Yeah.
They are there. Thank you so much.
Cheers,
And
man.
then, Dawn, we're gonna throw you over here. Your turn.
Thanks for having me. Great talking to you guys. Can't wait to meet in person, all of you guys, and share beers at some point when we have some time to get out of the brewery. Yeah, Seed's open Friday evenings 5 to 9, Saturday 12 to 8, Sunday 12 to 6. It's about all we can handle right now. We don't have enough beer. So trying to make more beer, hopefully opening our outdoor seating soon. But yeah, Amanda and I are always there. So happy to talk. Love meeting new people and sharing beers. And Seed Beer on Instagram and Facebook for anyone that doesn't follow us.
And also, when you're at the Seed, you can walk next door and go to have a cocktail or throw some axes because they're in a shared space with a distillery and an axe throwing. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a nice little trifecta. We've got Little Water Distillery right next to us and Westicunk hatchet throwing on the other side. So it's up to everyone to decide what order they like to do those three in, but it's a fun time.
And also, while you're back over at Bonesaw as well, you can head into town and visit some of the other breweries that are within like 3 minutes, I think it is, to get to the next place. Maybe less. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a fun time down in Glassboro. And then
Well, I'll reiterate what everybody said. You know, it was a pleasure to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, can't wait to swing by and drink more of your beer and see what you guys are doing in person. You can check us out at AE Beer. We're open, Wednesday through Sunday at 3 o'clock. So check us out online. We're on Resi. We're trying to have a nice variety, and we're figuring things out and doing a lot of cool things. So love to have you come by.
Oh yeah.
And I'm Mike, and I'm sitting next to these guys, even though I just moved myself over. See? Now we can move that. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. And, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, everybody.